Hello, I'm Dr. Nolt,
And I'm Dr. Williams.
and we are going to give you a little bit of background on lab activity 8, and we're looking at form and motion in this lab.
Specifically, we're going to look at the locomotion of vertebrates. And we're going to move from station to station, examining how fish move, how reptiles move, how amphibians move, how birds move, how quadruped, four-legged animals move, and how biped mammals move.
Basically, we really want you to realize the type of skeleton an animal has and how it provides the type of locomotion we observe in that animal. And remember, thinking back in the beginning of the lab, we discussed the functions of bones, and one of the main functions we talked about is the fact that they provide points for muscle attachments. The more points for muscle attachments create more possibility of flexibility and more wider range of motion.
Yes. Okay, so let's start with our fish. Of course, you all know that fish swim. That's not a big surprise to you. But we want to talk a little bit about the musculars and skeletal adaptations that allow them to swim. Okay, so the first exercise we're going to look at is looking at how fish move. And of course, you all know that fish swim. But we want to examine a little more carefully how the skeleton and muscles contribute to how a fish swims. So if we move in and look at a fish skeleton, we can see that the skeleton of the fish consists first of some bones, plates that make up its skull. Then there are a series of vertebrae that run the entire length of the fish. Additionally, there are a series of ribs that make up most of the muscular or most of the skeletal structure. And additionally, they have some fins. And essentially, fish have fins that consist of several different things. First of all, there is a dorsal fin at the top that is just an extension of the ribs and the vertebrae. There is a caudal fin that is merely an enlarged set of rays or bony projections that go out into the tail. There's usually an anal fin that again is just an extension of the ribs. Additionally, there are some pectoral fins, a pair of pectoral fins. And that makes up the equivalent of the pectoral girdle that we're going to see in the other vertebrates. The pectoral girdle are the bones associated with the shoulders and the arms.
Can I just add to that the fact that what you can see in this diagram is Dr. Williams was talking about the caudal and dorsal. They're fused to essentially the axial skeleton. Now, if you look at the pectoral and the pelvic fins, they're fused. They're not fused directly, but they're connected via a bony girdle. You think about your arms and your legs. Your shoulder bones are considered of your pectoral girdle, and you have a pelvic girdle. So those limbs are not fused to the exoskeleton, but connected via a series of bony girdles.
That's very good, correct. Now, basically, how a fish swims is that a series of muscles connect one rib to the next rib. And basically, they can contract the muscles on one side, causing the fish to bend in that direction, relaxing the muscles on the other side, and repeatedly doing that and create a sinusoidal and S-shaped motion as they swim through the water. And that's what creates most of the motion for swimming in fish. Yes, they may move their little pectoral girdles here a little bit and do a little bit of, quote, flapping with that. But in most fish, all that does is give direction and balance and doesn't help them swim that much.
I don't know if you can see it in the aquarium over here, and you can look at the swimming motion of rather large goldfish. But from the back, the swimming motion is more than just a flick of the tail to propel the fish, because it requires much more force to overcome. Is it gravity or friction are the fish moving against? And it's friction. It's much easier to walk beside the pool than swim through the pool. So the fish are trying to overcome the force of friction there, and you can see they're transferring that wave-like or S-shaped motion, muscle contraction motion across their bodies as they move forward.
Now, another thing to note about the fish is that the bones that make up the fish are very thin and light. If you compare the bones in a 12-pound bass to the bones in a 12-pound rabbit, those are big rabbits and bass both, but if you compare them, you'll find that the bass has much smaller bones than does the rabbit. One reason for that is that the rabbit has to have enough strength in its bones to hold up its weight, whereas the bass swimming around in the water has about the same density as the water, and it more or less floats in the water. It doesn't have to have structural strength to hold up its body. The buoyancy of its body actually helps it hold up. The bad news for the bass is that if you take it out of water and toss it on the land, it's in trouble. It can flop around. It can't really hold its body up erect because it doesn't have bones and muscles strong enough to do that.
I like to tell my students that if we would pack the same equivalent amount of muscle in our bony frame as a fish does on its frame and try to stand up right now, it would be so heavy and dense we would almost collapse. So the property of buoyancy really helps fish maintain. They require a much more higher muscle mass, and they can bear it because of buoyancy in water.
Right. I'll add to that one more thing. Fish have a spatial structure within their body cavity that helps them maintain that buoyancy. They have a structure called a swim bladder. And the swim bladder is essentially a sac in which the fish can gulp air and put air inside this sac. When they do that, that of course makes them more buoyant because air is less dense than water and they tend to float better. They can also expel air from that sac and become more dense and move up and down that way.
Another question you might want to consider here in this section is the question, do fish have limbs? Now, this is not a trick question. If you think about when aquatic animals evolved to become terrestrial, some of their fins would have been adapted to providing locomotion, providing legs and arms. Now, if you want to consider which fins on a fish may evolve into limbs on land, two considerations. Those fins have to come in pairs, and those fins have to be not fused to skeletal structure, but be attached via girdles. So consider which fins on the fish may be equivalent to limbs.
Gee, that seems like it might be the pectoral and pelvic girdle.
Yeah, well, let them look at that.